Hugh Hewitt talking to you from the Kirby Center, Hillsdale College's flagship post outside of the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C., talking to you tonight about charter education K through 12 in a teletown hall hosted by me, Hugh Hewitt, host on the Salem Radio Network and NBC as well as MSNBC. My friend Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College all these many years, and Phil Kilgore, who is the director of the Barney Charter School Initiative for Hillsdale, which encompasses 17 schools in 8 states to educating 8,000 students right now. And we're here to tell you a lot about why charter education is flourishing in the public domain. And Dr. Arnn, let's begin with you. You come from Arkansas via Claremont Graduate School. You've been at Hillsdale since the year 2000. Why did you embrace charter school as one of Hillsdale's missions?
So public education is a whole old and hallowed thing in America, and the only thing that's been changed about it is the same thing that's been changed about everything in government. It's bureaucratic now. It's ruled from the top down. More than half the people who work in public education are not school teachers, and that number has grown 760% since 1950, and the number of students has grown 96%.
So as part of the mission of the college, so is the reformation of K through 12 education.
So the truth is, if you do education according to the ways that have been known how to do it, you know, as I used to say, since Hector, the Greek hero, was a pup, then if you use those hallowed ways, which are all made consonant with human nature, students will learn. And so we happen to know how to do that at Hillsdale College, and so we are sponsoring now 17 charter schools, and the number is growing.
Now, what's important about people to know tonight, they can participate in this. This is a teletown hall. We will take your questions via Facebook if you're looking on Facebook right now, or if you press *3 on your phone, you can also get in the queue to talk to Dr. Arnn and Phil Kilgore. Phil, you're a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy, served your country for nearly a decade. Now you're in education. Why did you go and join up with what began as the Barney Family Foundation grant in 2000?
Well, the mission of Hillsdale College is really what drew me to an association with this fabulous institution, and the idea that this could reach further into the K through 12 ranks was very exciting. My own children were enrolled in a classical charter school, and so when Dr. Arnn said that this was something that the college was venturing into, I was very excited about that, and the conversation took off from there.
And you also have a $748,000 challenge grant, which one person could actually match tonight, but we'll take them in $10 donations, $1,000 donations, or up to $748,000 to match that. What will that money go to if people participate in helping to fund the expansion of the initiative?
Right. Well, our efforts to help these schools from the school standpoint, ours is all pro bono because these schools themselves, their own operations are publicly funded, but the service and support that they get from Hillsdale College is something that they cannot get anywhere else. It's very unique. And so this provides support for the college's outreach to these schools. We provide consultation, we provide training. So these are the things that help these schools become great. It focuses on the boards, those that lead the school, and the teachers. So we're trying to help these schools become great.
The wonderful Kathleen prepped me, and she told me that you have a manual that you actually execute, from the cost of setting them up to how do you get a director, how do you get a board, how do you find a principal, how do you put together a curriculum. Run through that, Phil Kilgore, and then I'll ask Dr. Arnn about the curriculum, and then we'll begin to go. Again, if you're in line, go to *3 if you want to ask a question of Dr. Arnn, Phil Kilgore, or go on Facebook and type us up a question.
Right. Well, this whole process begins with local citizens who have a passion for education reform and understand that classical education is really the thing that's going to change their community and provide this great support to families there. And so when a conversation begins between us and a local group of citizens, then we're able to guide them in the program that we've outlined, and we help them with their application process to an authorizer in their state so that they could be granted a charter. We also have programs that provide training to those that will lead the school. That's a very special person who has the ability to lead a classical charter school. And so we provide specific training support to them. And then we provide teacher training as well. And this would be on the specific curriculum that we have designed for these schools. And so this is it's a life cycle sequence that helps these schools get on their feet and then provides them support well into the out years.
Dr. Arnn, for years I've been sending parents of precocious kids to see you, to actually come to your office and put up with you for an hour to talk about Hillsdale. If someone's listening tonight and they want their kids in a charter school but they haven't got one, can they come to Hillsdale and get started?
They can, especially if you're in one of the states, which is more than half the states where the charter law is pretty good. Then we know how to help you apply and get your charter. And I want to say one thing to understand is that there's only one thing you have to get right to have a great school, and that's everything. And it starts with what you set out to teach. And that's a beautiful thing and a commanding thing. The teachers have to know what it is and how to teach it. And then the students have to be told, and they have to sign a code. And the teachers have to sign a code. And the parents have to sign a code that we are going to undertake to learn these things. And then if everybody shows up a volunteer and makes best efforts to learn these things, then the results are magical. I mean, they just take off.
Have you visited many of these 17 schools?
I've been to nearly all of them.
Oh?
Several of them more than once. I will say that one of them happens to be run by the most important young academic in America today, my daughter, Dr. O'Toole. And so, of course, I hear about that one every week. But I hear about them all a lot, and they're the same in this way. Young people, just remember, a young person is a human thing. We all grow up about the same rate. And then a teacher, that's a wonderful thing to be. My dad was a high school teacher in Pocahontas, Arkansas. I'm a teacher today. It's a tremendous and joyous undertaking, but you have to take the work seriously. And it's great to have help with people who really know a lot about it. And remember, Hillsdale College is soon 175 years old.
You've been doing this a bit.
We've been pretty good at this for a long time.
Phil Kilgore, how do you find a head of school? We're going to go start taking people again. If you want to get in line, *3 on the phone or your Facebook questions. But how do you find a head of school? It's got to be the hardest job if you haven't got Dr. Arnn's gene pool to work with.
It is very challenging. Well, the good news is that Hillsdale College itself, because it casts such a great stature across the country, many people are aware of what we're doing, and it draws quality candidates to our doorstep. But also within the schools, we have found a number of people who have been in the classroom teaching, who have what it takes really to get on a leadership trajectory, and so we were able to find excellent candidates from within the school as well. So those are two great places.
So let me emphasize, if you're listening and you want to start a charter school, Hillsdale will help you. If you want to help them help people, you can contribute online to this challenge grant of $748,000, which we don't want to go to waste. We want it to get into the initiative. But now let's go online for our first question to Joan. Oops, it's gone to on the phone. Timothy from Michigan has a question about Common Core curriculum. Timothy, you're on with Dr. Arnn and Phil Kilgore.
Hi, Dr. Arnn. I just wanted to first say you are doing a wonderful job at Hillsdale College. I serve on the Washtenaw County Republican Executive Committee, and my question is, Common Core curriculum, is this something that the election's coming up, we got Bill Schuette running, and I'm just wondering, is this something that we should try to get rid of in Michigan?
Yeah, it's the Common Core is not really common and not really a core. And what it does is it does attempt to cover broadly everything in history and science and English and math, but it does it while reducing all of it into just a stream that goes by. And so there aren't any great moments in history where you would focus, like Shakespeare, for example, who was, better than your average author. And, Socrates made a mark, back in his day. And so it's not organized to get to the bottom of the importance of those things. And it also turns the teacher into a kind of robotic being, detailed instructions about what's to be done at every moment. So there's a lot wrong with that thing. And, of course, it ties into this regime of high-stakes standardized testing that we use to regulate education these days. And just remember, education happens in the mind and heart of each student and the other people in the room, who are the other students and the teacher. So you should focus energy on that. So, yeah, we got to get rid of that, Tim.
Now, thank you, Timothy. Phil Kilgore, we have a lot of parents listening, thousands of them. And the highest risk they have is the risk that they take with their children. So they're obviously going to want them to be educated well and in the good things, but they're also going to want them probably to be able to get into Hillsdale College when they're done with one of your charters. How many students progress from your charter schools to a good college with a good curriculum?
Well, we have had just a handful of graduating classes since these schools began. And so we have had a couple of students matriculate into Hillsdale College. And the thing that we find about that is they have seen a continuity of their experience in these schools into Hillsdale College because there is the same underlying philosophy that animates the curriculum and the instruction in both institutions.
So it's seamless for them. How about other schools?
Yes.
Do they go on? Can they get into the Ohio State University, for example?
The students that graduate
The ones who can't get into Hillsdale.
Oh, my pen slipped into your leg.
Our graduates have garnered some excellent opportunities and scholarship at impressive institutions, and so we are amassing some good records right now, even just in these first 2 or 3 years of graduating classes.
Yeah, I get the point. If you graduate from one of these charter schools, you are able to read Latin.
Okay, that's it. Then you can go anywhere.
And then everybody has gone through at least pre-calc. So
Don't scare anyone away.
it's hard, right? I mean, I warn you, do not make the mistake of coming to Hillsdale College. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
But having said that, these schools generally have wait lists larger than their student bodies.
How do they cover the cost? They're public schools, correct?
Right.
And so, Phil Kilgore, how do they cover the cost?
Well, the schools themselves are funded by the state with the per pupil revenue that comes from the state. And so they have to be efficient because they are typically funded at about 2/3 to 3/4 of what the regular public schools do receive. And so they have to be efficient.
So correct me if I'm wrong. You provide them the keys to open the door to public funding and then the blueprint on which to build the right architecture using that funding to produce excellence in secondary education.
That's correct.
I like the way I put that. On Facebook, Eugene asks, what is the definition of a classical charter school? Larry Arnn.
Well, the word classical is an interesting word. It's cognate, of course, with the word class. And the classical things are the first things that determine the class. So when we think of the classical age, we refer above all to Attic Greece in the Western world. And that means that it was discovered there for the first time a philosophy meant to be applicable and give guidance to the good for every human being, regardless of their country or their place. So, and you remember at the time Greece was in profound conflict with Persia, and they meant Persia too, the East. So that the first school was Plato's Academy, and it was named for a general named Academicos, who gave him some land to hold his school. So we hark back to the original learning in the Western world in the classical times, and that means we read those classical books and all the great books that have come later.
Phil Kilgore, do you find yourself in conflict with state authority over conformance or nonconformity to some of the tedium of the modern bureaucratic educational state?
Well, there has to be a conversation between the school and the state authorities so that the obligations that the school does have to the state are satisfied, but don't also compromise the mission and philosophy of the school. So that conversation is designed in order to work out points where there are differences in alignment, and those are important conversations. But so that's really the key factor here.
And Dr. Arnn, I'll get to you right in a second, Amy. Don't go anywhere from California. Hillsdale is famously independent of all federal money, and ferociously so for a variety of reasons, which we talk about weekly on my radio show, and which people can discover at hillsdale.edu. How do you keep that independent spirit in a public charter school, which cannot necessarily be independent of the public school system?
Well, of course, there's tensions all the time, and Phil just spoke very diplomatically. We have to maneuver through those. But just remember, a school, the Northwest Ordinance supplies the first federal support for education in Article 3, and it says, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall ever be encouraged. How do they fund it? They take 1/36 of the western lands, including Michigan, where we are, not right now, we're in Washington, D.C., Michigan, where Hillsdale College is, and they leave that as an endowment to be controlled by the states for education in that township. And my point is, education has always been important in America. It used to be governed the way everything else was, from the bottom up, not the top down. Now, charter schools, what that means, the word charter means contract. It means they have a separate, different kind of contract from the regular public schools, and those contracts grant them more independence. And my own view, I will tell you, is that rather than these high-stakes centralized testing, we should only have simple tests, but above all, we should remember that schools are accountable to the people who love the kids, which means
It
the
is a good
parents.
thing that began in the Northwest Territory, the capital of which was Warren, Ohio. And I believe that if you can begin the reflourishing of them out of Hillsdale, that the system that we presently have is close to crumbling. And I just want a quick editorial comment. I think it is so fraught with cracks and so much discussed about that the revolution there could be as quick in its disintermediation from public traditional education as Uber was to the taxi cab medallion in New York. Do you agree, Phil Kilgore?
I do. Parents respond to these kinds of choices. They're hungry for alternatives. Sometimes it's a function of concern about the school that their kids otherwise would need to go to because of safety issues or performance issues of the school. Sometimes they simply understand that another model is needed and they're drawn to the classical model.
Larry, Arnn, do you agree that public education in America is ripe for a revolution?
Yeah, everything you said except for the part about it happening overnight. We have to start on a long road back to recovery, to knowledge, and to understanding. You know, we have bureaucratized education. That means we're trying to manage it from the center. But the learning is local, where the kids are and the teachers are. We have to recover the dignity and independence of teachers and parents and students. And it'll take a long time for the system to adjust to that recovery, but it can start now and it can get traction now.
We'll talk more about speed, but first let's go back to the phones. I would remind everyone on Facebook, you can type in your question if you wish to give Dr. Arnn, Phil Kilgore a question via the phone. Hit *3 on your phone from the call-in and it will happen. Amy is calling from California this afternoon. What skills and education are required for someone starting a charter school? Amy, you want to expand on what you're looking for there?
Yeah, I just think that there's probably many people like myself in the audience thinking, I could do that. So what does it really take for somebody that's interested in getting involved?
Phil Kilgore.
Well, a group of founders needs to have a commitment to education reform.
How many?
Frequently, these founding groups are small, 5, 6, 7 people. So we don't need a large group, just a very committed core. And committed to a set of ideas if they're going to want to found a classical charter school. And I think that really is where it starts, is a fundamental commitment to an educational philosophy and a desire to really make a change in their community. So understanding what it takes to establish a charter school in a particular state. The laws are similar, but they're not uniform across the country. And so they need to understand what the state would require of them. They need to understand, have a really good understanding of the nature of the kind of school that they would start with us.
Now, we lost Amy, but what kind of people can do this? Can they be moms who have themselves matriculated but are outside of the workforce now? Can they be dads who've got fairly heavy workloads, or moms and dads who are both working outside of that? Give some idea to the audience the breadth and depth of skill sets that you could use, Larry Arnn.
Well, I heard Amy talk, and I read on your screen her question, and I will say that Amy could certainly do it. And did you hear the timbre in her voice when
I
he
did.
asked the question? I'd really like to do that, right? Well, that's 90% of the battle.
Someone is peaked.
That's
Somebody,
it. She's ready to go. So, Amy, sign up. We're ready.
How do you sign up, Phil Kilgore?
Well, if someone has got that kind of fire in their belly, if I can say that, then they should contact us. They could express and what their ideas are about what they want to do, and we'll have a conversation to make sure that we're seeking to do the same thing.
Everything Hillsdale is available at hillsdale.edu. Is there also a link there to the Charter School Initiative?
Yes, that's on the Hillsdale College website.
Hillsdale.edu. From Facebook, this question: will civics and American history classes be a large part of this program? Dr. Arnn, it's kind of like the high fastball that I'm hoping that Edwin Encarnacion gets from the Indians tonight.
Yeah, no, this is Hillsdale College. We don't care about that stuff. No, you have to. So here's one of the things you learn in classic philosophy. Our natural affinity for each other expresses itself above all, in the formation of the political community, which is grounded in our ability to talk to each other. I'll take you through that argument sometime. It's very beautiful. And so people always live under law, or they live in chaos. And therefore, it becomes an obligation of any educated person to understand, A, politics, and B, his own politics. You need to know politics generally so you can judge the quality of your own. And so, of course, we study the Constitution of the United States extensively in every school.
And how it ought to operate, not how it has
Well,
been operating.
and you know, as an informed citizen today, you have to make a contrast, right? We're in Washington, D.C., and today a couple of colleagues of mine have been going around talking to some important people. And we would like them to make the theme that, you know, the laws used to be passed in the Congress. But last year, the Congress passed about 150 laws, and yet 87,000 pages were added to the Federal Register. And that means they were passed in these regulatory agencies that really stand quite outside the Constitution. And there are efforts underway to fix that so that the laws could be... So anyway, the point is, you can't make an intelligent judgment about that, whatever you think about that. And there are respectable arguments about why the new way is better. But the first thing is, you have to know that those two things are different. And so you have to start with the original in order to lay down a base of comparison.
So there will be civics in American government. I want to take this moment to remind people there is a $748,000 challenge grant that will go to the Barney Charter School Initiative if it is matched dollar for dollar. If you have $1 to give or if you have $748,000 to give, we'll take them all. But I'd also suggest to you that if you're in the testamentary gift disposition moment, that is, you're talking to your lawyer about who do you want to leave money to, you want to talk to hillsdale.edu, go and find Dr. Arnn, find Phil, and not only match that grant, but put it into a legacy that isn't a building on some campus that will be full of the Antifa, but will be actually classically educating the next generation of citizen statesmen and just citizens, actually. Bonnie is calling from Florida. Bonnie, welcome. You're on with Dr. Arnn and Phil Kilgore.
Yes. Hello. My question is how you can instill the classical education in the lower grades. I think that's a good beginning right there, or is that part of your program?
It's a terrific question because people think of kindergarten and squares on the ground and putting your bumpers in the right square. How do you do classical education, Phil Kilgore, with a 5-year-old?
Well, I'll offer a couple of things. First of all, history in the lower elementary grades is really quite robust in our schools.
Fun, I imagine.
And very fun, because first graders study the ancient Egyptians. Second graders study ancient Greece. Third graders study ancient Rome. There you go, have it. By the end of the middle of the elementary grades, they've had a quick lower elementary level overview of the world of antiquity.
They've got swords and pyramids, Larry.
Right.
They've got their imagination going.
So if you go in Mrs. Reardon's class, who's the kindergarten teacher in the Leander Classical Academy near Austin, Texas, first of all, it's awesome how she teaches them. Because, you know, kindergartners in a group naturally behave like snakes in a bucket. and so she has this thing, she says, stack your blocks. And they put their hand on top of their head, and they drag an imaginary string upwards, and their whole body straightens up. So the first thing you teach them is sit up and pay attention. Then the second thing, like one day she says, she's awesome. I happen to admire her very much and been in her class several times and flunked. She says one day she writes slowly on the board, and she turns around, and they're all staring at her, right? They got their blocks stacked. And she says, today we're going to learn. And she starts spelling C-A-P-A, and she says, capacity. And everybody goes, I got to know what that is. And by the time it's over, the first grade's about to be invited over for an imaginary party, she says. And she's got picture sizes on the page. And which picture would you pick? Which one has the right capacity? They're learning science. And 5 minutes ago, they were behaving like snakes.
Yeah, that is. And so let's go to Rick in Colorado. I love the fact that we're geographically distributed in this teletown hall all across the United States. And remember, hit #3 if you want to be on the phone like Rick, or write it in if you're on Facebook. Rick, what is your question for Phil Kilgore and Dr. Larry Arnn?
My question, gentlemen, thanks for letting me on. My question's about phonics, and why is it not used, at least not in the public schools? I don't know if it's used in the charter schools, but it seems like it's the foundation at the elementary school level for reading, writing, and spelling, and also for giving children the need to think, or the way to learn to think in small bits at a time.
Phil Kilgore, let's answer the second question first. Is it used in the charter schools?
Absolutely. That is the way to teach young people how to read.
How come we have to keep discovering that?
Because there's been a mindset in the schools of education for the last 50 years that another way is preferred, and that has to be uprooted, and we have to return to phonics as a clear way to be able to teach kids how to read.
So in every one of the 17 academies run by Hillsdale College, not run by, but advised by Hillsdale College, Dr. Larry Arnn, phonics is a cornerstone.
Yeah, and the callers made a perceptive implication. Phonics is natural, and it's easy to understand why. And when Aristotle is explaining, by the way, why we are political, he says, animals then use their voices to indicate pleasure and pain. Only human beings use theirs to distinguish the just from the unjust, the advantageous from the disadvantageous. This gift of speech, which is the same thing in Greek, the word for speech and the word for reason is the same word, that's our defining human trait. Now, here's what that means about phonics. When a kid gets to be 2 years old, they just start talking. And nobody teaches them to talk. There's no place to start. And when they talk, cup, I'm looking at things that are around me, but name something not, that's a common thing. Cow. If you say that sound, cow, there's a million cows. And every one's slightly different from every other one, sometimes largely different. And yet, 2-year-olds learn that abstract noun stands for a whole class and category of things. And they just pick that up. They can just do that. I like to say, in my family, we raise dogs and children, and they both live on the floor and eat their food until about 2 years old, when the kids start talking and the dogs never do. Now, once they can talk and they go to kindergarten, all you got to do is show them the relationship between the sounds they know and the marks on the page. And that's what phonics does.
And very well. And
Oh,
very
yeah, it
effectively.
really works.
We are at the halfway point of our Town Hall, so I wish to reconfirm for everyone, if you've come in late, we're on Facebook and by phone tonight with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, all things Hillsdale, available at hillsdale.edu, and Phil Kilgore, who is the director, I want to say this right, of the Barney Charter School Initiative. There's also a $748,000 challenge grant that you can be a part of by going to hillsdale.edu and saying, here's my 100, my 500, my $500,000. Build these schools as fast as you can. And I want to go back over the basics of what the initiative does. And I might actually ask Dr. Arnn about the Barney Family Foundation and why they started this.
Oh, yeah. So I got a great email today from an old friend of mine, and it would be terrible of me to say the name Howard Amundsen. But he said, so you named your initiative after a dinosaur. And I replied back, no, a
Howard thing to say.
a fake dinosaur. Steve Barney is a friend of ours, the college, and he has a really great characteristic. He gets himself all worked up and cries. And he's a successful man. And so he got all worked up one day about the fact that kids are not learning in schools. And he pointed across the street at a school across the street, and he said, they're being deprived of their chance for a great life. And then he starts crying and poking me in the chest with his finger. You, Larry Arnn, have to do something about that. And so I told him that I had thought of an idea some years ago, presented to another fellow, John Walton, who last died in a plane crash. And I said, we're not going to go, we're not in the political business, except in the most profound way. I said, we're not going to go lobby the legislature. We just want them to leave us alone. But there are these charter schools, and we could help to make them good. And it'd be odd for us to do that because we don't take any money from the government. And colleges do sometimes get in the charter school business, and they make some money from it. So we don't get any money from these charter schools. But I said, maybe that would help keep our motives clean. So he loved that idea, and he made a major gift to that. Has recently made another one. And he's not an infinitely wealthy man, but he's wealthy, and he's been very generous to this thing.
Hats off to Mr. Barney. I mean, hats off. Let me go to Facebook because this segues quite nicely. From Mark on Facebook, is there a blueprint for a ground-up Barney charter school startup? Phil Kilgore, is there a blueprint?
Well, there's a blueprint in the fact that we have a scope and sequence for the academic program. The advice that we give, the counsel that we give for founding groups as they're coming together, a lot of times is a function of the local conditions where they live. But we know the general pathway that a group must travel in order to get a school open. So all that information goes into their application. We work with groups right now that are exactly in the midst of this process, and so. The blueprint itself is targeted toward the kind of school that we're trying to establish.
Somebody's got the tingle right now. They're
Yes.
thinking, I can do this, and I'm going to go to hillsdale.edu and find this Kilgore guy or get a hold of Arnn. How long is it going to take them from tingle to touchdown for the high school football team? I mean, when do they open the doors?
Well, I've never seen it happen in less than 2 years from the initial inspiration
thing.
to a doors opening.
Okay.
Because several key things have to happen, and the state authorizer has a big piece of that process where a group goes through the review and approval process with the state authorizer. But the founding group itself must form. They must write an application. They need to go through that process with their authorizer. And then once that happens, they need to get ready to get the doors open, which there's a lot of details associated with that. So 2 years, we've seen some 3, sometimes 4 for particularly difficult circumstances, and a good tenacious group, they'll just stick with it and get the job done.
Perfect segue to On the Phone, and I remind people who are listening, *3. I'll say that twice for the people who are from Pittsburgh, *3, and then you'll get through. Oh, we have someone from Pittsburgh. Wendy from Pittsburgh, how are you? I'm giving you a hard time because I'm a Browns fan, Wendy, and we're jealous.
I'm originally from Youngstown, so there you.
There you go, Steel Valley, steel in the soul, steel in the spine. What's your question?
Listen, my question is, what about the teachers? What are you looking for in with regard to the people who are teaching in these schools?
Dr. Larry Arnn, I'm going to let you talk about teachers because you are one.
Love. They need love. And if they love their subject, then they will know it. And if they love the students, then they will know how to bring those two things together.
I was told something which I think is marginally true, but probably. If you don't love calculus, you never had a great calculus teacher. And if you don't love physics, you never had a great physics teacher. I barely got out of physics in high school. I did all right in calculus, so I put that down to do you agree with that, gentlemen?
Oh, so this term, a good friend of mine is here in Washington, and I haven't seen him much lately, but we're both teaching Aristotle's Ethics at our separate colleges right now.
It's a hard book.
It is. It's hard, but also it's wonderful. And I have I've never seen anybody who didn't start reading that book with difficulty, but I've never seen anybody who, after an hour of talking about it with somebody who understands it, doesn't go, wow. It's scary how great that book is. And what comes to you, when you see what he's saying, and then soon enough, by the way, you'll see it for yourself, is what comes to you is he is describing the whole structure of the universe and where you fit in it and how you're to live in it.
And what I want people who are watching to take away, and we get this each week when we do the Hillsdale Dialogue, is that you get excited about your children living this life. They don't go through a grind at a charter school if it's a good charter school. They go willingly and with joy, and they come back educated and knowledgeable and occasionally feel virtuous.
They do. They do. The idea of moral character is something that is front and center at these schools. They understand that it's important for the schools to bring knowledge in order to furnish the minds of these young people with understanding of the human world and the natural world. But they also realize that they're shaping the character of these people so that they can, when they finish their time at these schools, move into adulthood and understand what it means to be a fine citizen and a good husband and a good mother, a good employee. All of these kinds of things are important. And so the teachers understand that virtue, that character, all these things are the lessons that are lifted out of the curriculum day in and day out.
I think of 8,000 students, and that's the total number currently in the charter school initiative, the Barney Charter School Initiative. They have ahead of them lifespans of 60, 70, and 80 years. So you're actually 8,000 times 80 number of years of citizenship. It's a big undertaking, but it get a lot bigger with support. Don't forget our challenge grant of $748,000. I used to work for PBS, so I can do challenge grants all night long. Let's go back to Facebook. Kate, do your charter schools use technology in the classroom? I'll go with you first.
There is use of technology in the classroom. It's in a modest fashion, and it's something that is done in order to never let it supplant the authority of the teacher in the classroom. It's the human being, that teacher in front of the classroom, that teaches the students, not the technology. But it is a tool that from time to time comes in handy.
I've been on Hillsdale's campus enough to know that technology is not a phobia there nor a fetish.
Yeah. Well, I'm a gadget guy. And so I like all that stuff. But
Inspector Gadget, you come to mind every
there
time.
we go.
I see
Yeah,
you.
but I mean, what do I read? I read Aristotle's Ethics on the Amazon Kindle or the iPad. So the main thing is the focus should not be on the manner that you discover a thing. I like technology because I travel all the time and I like to have all my stuff with me. But on the other hand, the stuff is the stuff, right? So I teach Aristotle and I teach Winston Churchill and I teach America. Well, I know about those things and I've got them with me all the time.
Hillsdale.edu/townhall if you would like to make a gift. Hillsdale.edu/townhall. We make it easy for you to be a part of this revolution in education. Let's talk about physical plant, Philip. You need a building. You can't just do this over the internet. How do you find buildings? How do you find the place that can accommodate an expanding group of students, parents, teachers?
That's one of the great challenges that a founding group faces because depending on where they are, there may not be many options. So we've seen this play out in a number of different settings. The group needs to determine how they're going to finance their facility. They've got to pay for those expenses out of their operating budget.
Do you help them figure that out?
We have conversations with them about that and can help point them in the direction of where some sources of that kind of financing and funding might be. But the good news is that, again, because local governance, local control is one of the primary principles, they know their lay of the land in their particular community much better than we possibly could. And so they know where there might be facilities, where something might be an effective place and another location that might not be so great.
So I want to say something else about that. So in that I wasn't satisfied with that, Phil, although Phil is the greatest guy in the world. So first of all, in principle, here's the fact. In principle, you can take 65 to 75 or 80% of the money that the public schools get, and you can use that money to fund not only your operations but also your capital cost. And that means in most states.
Oh, I did not know that.
So in most states, the money is there, right? And that, as long as you get enough kids in the school. And so that means that you can, in principle, and most of our schools do, fund their building out of their operations. And that means you can get a Lindor, or the best thing of all is find some fine person who wants to help you, who's got a building or got some money or knows how to do that sort of stuff. But the point is, the resources are there to put that together.
I'm curious, every bishop in America who's closed a Catholic school ought to be calling you and saying, we'd like you to use our closed Catholic school. Have you repurposed old buildings anywhere yet?
In a few places, yeah.
Well, Clarence Thomas went to a school for 2 years in Savannah, Pius X. It's now Savannah Classical Academy.
Ta-da. I went to Pius X. I am not a justice of the Supreme Court. Does not guarantee that. Back to the phone from Florida. Mo, would you give us your question for Phil Kilgore and Dr. Larry Arnn?
Okay, this is Mo. You said you.
Yep, go ahead, Mo. You're on a little tape delay there. Just speak into the phone.
Okay, thank you so much for allowing me time to ask a question. I would like to see this as a national debate. I watch TV news on a regular basis, and there are all kinds of debates and things going on, from football players kneeling down to the tax plan and all kinds of things. But I don't see our Department of Education secretary lady up there being interviewed. I don't see the national debate on this issue of charter and voucher programs versus other kinds of education. What can we do to get this to be a national debate, bring it to the awareness of the average guy out there?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mo. And I will say, over the years, I've been in media since 1989, intermittently efforts have been made to have the so-called debate. I'm using air quotes if you're just listening and you're not watching on television, because the debate is actually cyclical. It comes and it goes as people grow frustrated, but it never gets traction. I think what might put apart the Barney initiative is that it's a real deal. It's happening. It's not a debate about whether it ought to happen. You put aside the debate, you're just doing it.
Yeah, think of this. So first of all, there is, of course, a huge debate, Mo, about what kind of government we're going to have. That's everywhere all the time. The media is one-sided about that in the main. And so the question of shall we continue with the bureaucratic form or shall we have the constitutional form, that's a big question. Now, the education system is a subset of that, right? Because if you just let schools run, let parents be sovereign in them, let local people run them, they can get help from people like us. And, K through 12 education is not rocket science. And you can make it great if you get the elements right. We can help you with that.
You can make it great. And I want to emphasize again, if you go to hillsdale.edu/townhall and make a contribution, it will be matched. And if everybody watching this or listening to it right now does a $100 gift, we'll hit the match in no time at all. Or more, you can do more. But just you say $100, that's a lot of money. It is, but the energy you put into to transforming the American education system is remarkably obvious and available to you. Hillsdale.edu/townhall. On Facebook, Chris, how are these charter schools different from other charter schools available? It's a great question for both of you. Philip and then Dr. Arnn. How are they different?
Well, charter schools in general, each will have its own organizing principle. There are charter schools for the arts. There are charter schools that are so focused on science and technology. These focus on classical education, and so having an understanding of the fundamentals, this balance across these four core disciplines of math and science and history and literature, and that Latin is taught, and that moral character is something that is front and center. These fundamental characteristics of these charter schools, these classical charter schools, are what distinguish it from many other charter schools.
Larry?
Well, the Barney Charter School Initiative schools are a community, and we haven't mentioned one of the most exciting things about it. In the summer, teachers from these schools, last year 400 or so, they come up for a week to 10 days, staggered over 3 or 4 weeks. Different groups, board members come 1 week, headmasters come, young school teachers, kindergarten through 3rd grade come, and they come and they spend time together, and they spend time with our faculty. And, our faculty, a bunch of them have just adopted this stuff, right? There's a game theory guy with a Berkeley degree in our math department, and he's becoming an expert on how to teach basic math to little kids, right? And because they just really love this. And so the faculty of the college and the teachers and the headmasters, they spend an intense time together getting better and helping each other do that. And that's becoming very powerful force, and it's going to grow as the number of schools grows.
Let me ask you about pay for your teachers, and let me ask you about discipline for your students, because these are two of the problems that beset Catholic education through the 50s and the 60s. Rothschild that wrote about it. It was the death of the Catholic school system, that they could not keep up financially, even though there were the religious orders declined. They just couldn't keep paying it. And discipline was always the draw, but then that began to decline. So how do you deal with pay for teachers, Philip, and what do you do about discipline for students?
Well, all the schools are very desirous of paying the teachers competitively because they want to reward the commitment that the teachers have made to the schools. And so they have to make their budget balance, so that's an important feature as well. And so these teachers are, they're paid close to on par with what some of the regular public school pay scales, which go up precipitously upward, if that is the right description. These schools will try to make sure that these teachers are rewarded as well. But we also find a wonderful thing going on is that the teachers themselves are so committed to this that if there is a little bit of a gap between what they could make elsewhere in a public school and what they're making here, many of them are pleased to be able to actually do what they got into the profession to do in the first place, which is have the freedom to teach.
But that requires discipline. A second part of the question, Dr. Arnn. And you've been disciplining Hillsdale in an unusual way since 2000, which is not a heavy hand, but a set of rules to which people commit.
Well, if you've got the death penalty, then it can
It does help.
it helps.
Lose more students that way.
It helps,
It helps.
If you hang them up in front of everybody else, then they learn. No, so educating the young, especially about matters of their passions running away from them, which is most discipline problems come from that, they have to agree. So everybody has to take and sign an honor code to come to these charter schools. And that means they and their parents have signed up for this, and that means they have to be good. Now, when they're really young, on the one hand, they don't really understand when they first start out what that commitment is, but on the other hand, they're not very likely to be terribly unruly, except they wriggle all the time. So, yeah, the point is the culture of the school. Just remember, why would we want the parents to sign a code? The answer is schools are places where people cooperate to learn. So you got to get everybody on the same page. And then they thrive. And then when there's a problem, like, I work in a college, and, it's a fancy college, and but we make a contract with the parents. And then when they split them up at freshman convocation and the mothers leave their children behind for the first time, right? And they all bawl like babies. And the kids walk away and pretend to be sad to miss them. But then we take them upstairs and we give them a nice dinner before we send them off alone home. And I always tell them the same thing. I always tell them, if your kid calls and he's mad at us, you're on our side. You can find out later if we messed up, and if we did, we'll fix it. But you're on our side, right? In any dispute, which are uncommon at Hillsdale College, but still. And so you got to give that advice. And then people are helping each other in the school, and the school advances.
Now, I think it is unnecessary, unless people have not known of Hillsdale. Hillsdale is derived from the abolitionist movement. It is, without regard to race, color, gender, it is a place of freedom-loving people combining to the common purpose. Are the charter schools in the same tradition, Larry?
Well, charter schools they admit by lottery, and that means that there'd be in one school, the one I happen to know the most about. They had about 3 times as many initial applications as they could take.
And how old is that school?
That school is
It's in its 4th year this year.
Wow.
4th year, right? And that means that in the beginning, right? And so, the headmaster, Dr. O'Toole, my daughter, she called me up and she said, "That was terrible." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Well, they flashed up on the screen the list with a computer program, and you start reading down the names, and they can see that only the people above the red line got it. And the red line is very high on the page. And people just gasped, right? So then in the second round, when you have openings, they too have to be admitted by lottery.
Do they allow siblings to go?
Do they? What's the answer to that?
The law varies from state to state. Sometimes it is permitted.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better if you can do that,
Right,
of course.
it is. It's hugely important.
And, at Hillsdale College, by the way, there's not automatic entry for siblings, but, they get, we would rather...
You're aware of the... It's a qualification, not an impediment.
And, the curse of Hillsdale College is some preacher who's got 11 children, and they're all smart, right? Because they don't have any money, and we're going to have to pay to educate them. But that happens, I can tell you.
I'm sure it
You want to
does.
know the family names? I got them on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, so you remember you're building a culture. And the college can help with that because that's what we do. And, we have our private Hillsdale Academy that's now about 25 years old and a really great private school right off the campus at Hillsdale. And so we learned a lot from that. But we're learning faster from this because this is a big thing.
On the phone, Janie from Wisconsin. Janie, welcome. You're talking to Phil Kilgore, the director of the Academy Initiative of the Barney Charter School Initiative, and Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. Go ahead, Janie.
Hi, guys. How's it going? I'll make it quick. Hillsdale's kind of near and dear to our family. We have a daughter who's a junior there right now, and she loves it. We'll be there in a couple weeks to see her.
Oh, what's your last name, sir?
Denning.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Her name's Audrey.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, we're on the air, so I can't really say the usual joke. What a fine young woman she is.
Thank you. So, anyways, my question is, how does the charter school, or do charter schools in general, how do they address like music programs and sport? Do they have sports? Do they have music programs at a charter school? And how do they address the cost to cover such things?
Philip, go right ahead there.
So sports are very important to these schools. Athletics, fitness, all of the schools engage in those as part of the program. The arts are very important as well. They're an integral part of the curriculum. And so all of that is important and is present at these schools. Sometimes there are some expenses. If and the schools might do some fundraising to be able to buy musical instruments or to buy drama props, some athletic equipment. So there's some extra support that they are going to reach out to the community to get, but these are important facets of the life of the school.
At the Golden View Classical Academy in Colorado, I was there not long ago. Phil was there the same day. The lower school music teacher is a graduate of Juilliard. And so
that helps.
And so the upper school music teacher, I don't know where she went to school, but we sit in her class, and she's got them. She plays bits of music, and they're identifying the music, and they're talking about it and how it differs from another piece that they say. The point is, it's just awesome. And I think that's common.
You can start one of these. You can support all of them. Again, you go to hillsdale.edu/townhall to make a contribution. We have a $748,000 challenge grant. Your $10, your $100, your $5,000, your $748,000 tonight will help us. So please go and do that. And you can also hit #3 if you want to get a question in. As we begin to wind down here, we can't skip questions from Ohio. It is written on the stone tablets of wisdom. Holly is from Ohio. Your question for Philip Kilgore and Dr. Larry Arnn.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my question. I'm watching the Tribe game. I think they gave up a run, which is not good. But and my youngest son's name is Hugh.
Oh.
But my question is kind of my kids are growing up. If my husband and I were ever to do this, we live in Cleveland. We live in a nice suburb. I'm really interested in getting the kids who aren't exposed to this kind of education involved more. I would rather, see the school put in a lower income area or somewhere where we could draw from kids who don't have access to this. I do understand with the signing of the contract that, by the parents and the kids, it might make it a little more difficult. But do you have any schools that are already in those kind of areas, or could that work, where it's not like my kids and I'm bringing kids in that are just...
Go
ahead, Larry Arnn.
Good question. 3 of the 17, and one more opening next year in New Mexico, are in what do we call them? Urban schools. And that means that those problems that you name are there. Those are difficult. They make it hard for the student. Those are harder schools to do. We're very committed to it. It takes longer for them to get to a level of excellence, but they get there, and they're very worth the time and effort. And also at the college, we've been raising money for the Frederick Douglass scholarships. If you met the very great man, Frederick Douglass, friend of Abraham Lincoln, he would give you a visiting card with his picture on it, a photo of him on it, and that photo was taken in our oldest building at Hillsdale College. So he was a visitor to our campus twice, and we're very proud of that. And so we have scholarships now for kids who've grown up in difficult circumstances. We don't care what color they are. Any color is great by us. And so we are making an effort not just to help them through these charter schools, but also to help them go to a really fine college.
So, Phil Kilgore, could a third party, not a parent, be an organizer for an inner city school?
Absolutely. In fact, the majority of the members of these founding boards are not parents. They're local citizens. So it's a combination of all those in the community that care.
So if you really wanted to make life's work, you could try and get one of these things going. You'd need a band of brothers and sisters, and they'd have to get together and work with you. But you could make that your passion.
Absolutely.
See if you could organize it. Back onto Facebook at this time. Let's talk to Mary. How do you find classically trained teachers? Phil Kilgore, how do you recruit the teachers you need at these schools?
Well, you go to great colleges like Hillsdale College, and you look at the graduating class and find out who's interested in teaching and start to whet their appetites for the kind of thing that they can continue to do and love learning and have a fabulous academic atmosphere that they would continue to work in. So great liberal arts colleges are fabulous places. Poach, I would never confess to poaching. If someone comes and approaches us because they're drawn to it like a moth to a flame, absolutely we would open the doors to great candidates.
Now, you can't just use just graduated teachers. You've got to have people, or maybe you can, but I would assume you need some people to help teachers learn how to teach.
So there are two bottlenecks, right? There's a lot of the reason this revolution is starting. It's underway, and it's, God grant it's going to go far. But the reason it can't happen overnight is that it takes time to learn, to get good at teaching the best things across the ages in all the disciplines. And so not everybody as a school teacher gets that kind of education anymore. Indeed, there is active pressure from state departments of education to stop that kind of thing. The state standards help to obstruct that kind of thing. So there's a lot of problems there, right? And on the other hand, colleges that do teach that stuff are thriving these days. We are. And so more and more. And as there's more demand, if you understand basic economics, then there'll be more supply.
And if there are more places to teach that allow you to teach the right way and support you in doing so, you'll draw more people to the profession.
If you're a graduate of Hillsdale College, if you're a senior, we have a jobs fair. It's a college fair. What do we call it?
Classical school job fair.
Class school job fair. And right, so we graduate 320 kids, and we get 45 or 50 schools show up, and everybody. And they do it in the student union, so the kids walk by it on their way to meals. And if you stop by in there and see those people, and they've got the schools bring marketing materials. And if you're a kid, and you can walk and chew gum at the same time, you get offered 4 or 5 jobs by the time you get out of there.
Because the raw material is there, and they will teach you to teach. Well, let's pick up the pace so we get to everyone we can. Helen is calling from Georgia. Helen, welcome to the Teletown Hall. Hillsdale.edu/town hall if you want to make a contribution. *3 if you want to ask a question. Facebook if you want to do it online. On the phone, Helen from Georgia. Go ahead, Helen.
Hey, this is Helen Adams, and I so appreciate you taking my call. I am just curious, as a retired instrumental music teacher, what fine arts programs you have in the curriculum, chorus, orchestra, band, what all is really involved in the curriculum, or is it up to each individual school?
Philip Kilgore.
In the K through 8 grades, there is an academic element of the curriculum for every grade in music and in fine arts. And those music teachers also incorporate some performance as well into the high school and in the middle school and the high school grades. Choir, band, orchestra. They may not get them all launched in the first year or the first 2 years, but they'll likely get choir launched in the first year, and instruments will follow shortly thereafter.
Dr. Arnn?
Yeah, they all have that. Thank you for the question. Music soothes the savage beast. And so you do have boys in these schools.
But athletics, you've also, to match it.
Yeah.
Parents want to know, can their swimmers swim, can their runners run, can their football players pass, catch, block, tackle? You've had a couple NFL people come out of Hillsdale, have you not?
That's right, playing right now.
So is this a recruiting system for Hillsdale?
Yeah, sports is important because human beings have this body that's like the bodies of animals, but they have an immortal soul in it. And the soul and the body are connected and interrelated. The human being is an integrity of body and soul. And so you have to use your body. You have to learn to be good at it. You have to pursue excellence in regard to that. Understand what the challenges are to that. So, of course, everybody does athletics. And I will also tell you something funny and really important to know, and that is athletics is, PE and exercise and sweat is really good for kids. And it helps them think. Yeah. And it fights depression.
And it clears the mind.
Yeah.
Let me get the last question, and then I'll come back and wrap up for everyone by reminding you. But I'll tell you right now, if you go to hillsdale.edu/townhall, you can contribute. There's a matching grant of $748,000. Please do it tonight as you watch this because you're moved and you think I want to be a part of that. If you want to start a school, go to hillsdale.edu and find the town hall. Go to hillsdale.edu and find the Charter School Initiative and get in touch with Philip. David is from Philadelphia. You get the last question. You're on the phone, David. Welcome.
Thank you. You may not want this as the last question, but Thomas Sowell wrote an article 3 days ago called 30 Blocks of Back to School about a West Philadelphia school. And my question really is, in that context, it's a phenomenal article, incidentally. He's an incredible writer, as you may know. My question is, because we have so many national problems, as some others have said before, to do with race and everything under the sun. Where is the linkage, if there is one, between these charter schools that you're talking about and the public school system at large? And he gives you all kinds of statistics here to do with blacks, Hispanics, whites, so on, what the mean SAT scores are, who scored how many in terms of average of percentages on those numbers and so on. How do you guard against having an even greater gap, even though the public school system is in disarray generally, which he points out in many ways here, by the way, in this article? Is anybody worrying about that, or are we just hoping?
So if I understand you right, and David, thank you for the question. Dr. Sowell's a friend of Dr. Arnn. You're worried about the charters being too good and the gap growing too great. Is that a concern?
I'm not worried about him being too good, but I'm worrying about. I don't know. There's another book that I favor called The Other Wes Moore. I don't know if you know Wes Moore at all, but he came from Baltimore in a black area, had another person with the same name about a few blocks away. His friend ended up in prison for the rest of his life for murder. And the Wes Moore who wrote the book ended up being a Rhodes Scholar and a Johns Hopkins graduate and so on and so forth that has done very well. So my point is, how do you let me read you just one quick quote. I know we're short on time.
We are short
Here's
on
the way
time.
this article starts. The problem isn't that Johnny can't read. The problem isn't even that Johnny can't think. The problem is that Johnny doesn't know what thinking is. He confuses it with feelings, unquote.
Okay,
so my point here is, the more you look at American society, the more you see people who cannot think or don't know what thinking really entails in a classical sense.
So I don't see how that ties to the question you were asking about race, because I've never yet seen anybody either thinking or feeling with their skin. I think you think and feel with your soul, a rational soul. And the only thing we can do about that is teach people that ain't so. And so you got to learn to think. And, I will tell you, I happen to am teaching right now Aristotle's Ethics. And one of the greatest and most beautiful teachings about that is that every good choice by every human being comes from an interplay of right thinking and right desiring. And in a ordered soul, which it is our purpose in these classical schools to produce, the desires come into accord with the thinking. And so they can both reason to the right thing and then they want to do it. And that's the whole key to becoming a thriving human being.
So to summarize, the Barney Family Foundation began in 2000 with a generous grant to Hillsdale College, which you can now be a part of with the challenge grant of $748,000. And you can call the number 800-437-2268. 800-437-2268. One more time for the Steelers fans, 800-437-2268. or you can go to hillsdale.edu/townhall to help. And please do help tonight, part of the revolution. A couple of closing comments from both of you. Philip Kilgore, it is your job to shepherd the Barney Charter School Initiative. What do you want people to take away from our conversation?
What I want them to take away is that this is having a fabulous impact on local communities, on families, and ultimately on the nation. And this is something that inspires hope because we're seeing the right things happen at the very grassroots level of what this nation needs most. And I am inspired every day that I work with these schools and see what's happening in the classrooms.
Dr. Arnn.
Well, learning is the highest thing, and learning about the highest things is the highest kind of learning. And to open young people to that is the key to all their future happiness and character and citizenship. So this is the thing that will work, and it's spreading very far, and it will provide an example. And if the world will listen to that example, we can return to our glories.
And if you are thinking one of two things, act on it. If you're thinking, I could do this, you can do it. Go to the website. And if you're thinking how to support this, you should support it tonight. Call 1-800-437-2268 or go to hillsdale.edu/townhall. Thanks to Kathleen and a crew of 7. Thanks to everybody who's listening on the town hall, teletown hall, who are watching on Facebook live streaming. The technology behind this is amazing, and you can learn that at a Hillsdale Charter School Initiative at the Barney Charter School Initiative. Thank you tonight. Thank you every day that you do something at Hillsdale.edu, and we'll be back for another town hall sometime soon.